Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story about a relationship tested by betrayal, the painful weight of guilt, and the emotional turmoil that comes when love turns into a burden. Let's dive right into it. I never thought needing help would make someone stop loving me, but that's exactly what happened. When I slipped down the stairs of our old apartment building, I heard the snap before I felt the pain. A second later, I was screaming, and Jake came running. I remember the look on his face: panic, concern, love. At that moment, I thought, thank God he's here. The doctor confirmed it: a fractured fibula. Clean break. I'd need to wear a boot, stay off the foot completely, and maybe even face surgery. It was crushing news. I was in pain, overwhelmed, and terrified of what the next few weeks would look like. But Jake, my boyfriend of almost 6 years, squeezed my hand in the hospital room and told me not to worry. He said, "We'll get through this together." I believed him. What I didn't realize was that together quickly became him doing everything, and me becoming the burden. The timing couldn't have been worse. Our lease on the apartment was up in less than 2 weeks, and we had just signed for a new place across town. I hadn't even started packing when I fell. Jake insisted we'd manage, that he'd take care of it, of me, of everything, and he did. At first, he helped me to the bathroom, brought food to the couch, handled the moving logistics, and even started driving me to work since I obviously couldn't take the subway. I was so grateful I cried once when he brought me coffee in the morning with a little note saying, "Rest. I got you." But less than 5 days in, something in him cracked. He came home one evening, slammed the door, and just stood there in the kitchen looking broken. "I haven't had a minute to myself all week," he said. "I'm doing everything and I'm exhausted." I felt a rush of guilt, like acid in my stomach. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't ask to get hurt." He didn't reply. He just walked into the bedroom and shut the door. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called my sister Ellie, crying into the phone. Without hesitation, she booked a flight from Seattle to Boston. "I'll help with the move," she said. "Don't worry about Jake. Just focus on healing." Ellie arrived 2 days later and jumped right in, packing, organizing, cleaning, even doing Jake's laundry without a word of complaint. I thought it would help. I thought once Jake saw he wasn't alone in this, he'd feel less pressure. But it only seemed to make things worse. The night I got the call from my doctor about the potential need for surgery, I was already on edge. I hung up, hands shaking, and looked over at Jake. "They might have to operate," I said quietly. "If it doesn't start healing on its own." He didn't say anything, just stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out. No explanation, no comfort, nothing. He came back a few hours later smelling like whiskey and said, "Sorry, I just needed space." "This is a lot." "No kidding." I wanted to snap, but I didn't. I just nodded and said, "I know." I thought things would settle after the move, that once we were in the new apartment, things would feel fresh, better. But moving day was an absolute disaster. The moving company canceled last minute, and Jake scrambled to find replacements. Everything was chaos. Boxes everywhere. Ellie trying to coordinate with the new movers. I sat on my knee scooter in the corner, feeling completely useless. Every time I opened my mouth, Jake snapped, "Stop asking questions. Can you just let me handle this? For once, don't make this harder than it is." By noon, I was crying quietly behind a stack of boxes. I wanted to believe he was just stressed, that once the chaos passed, we'd go back to being a team. But after Ellie flew back home, things got even worse. Every night, Jake came home irritated, emotionally distant. If I asked for help getting dinner or help adjusting my boot, he sighed like I'd asked him to lift a car. And then the concert came up. Jake had bought tickets months ago. Some rock band he loved, playing at a huge venue out by the casino. He was so excited. I had forgotten all about it. The night he brought it up, I hesitated. "I don't know if I can do it," I said gently. "There's going to be a lot of walking." His face went cold. "You know how much this means to me," he said. "After everything I've done the last few weeks, I thought you'd at least try to make it work." I froze. The guilt hit me like a punch. My throat tightened. I knew what he was doing, making me feel like I owed him for being decent. I gave in. Okay? I whispered. I'll go. I smiled through the panic, but all I could think was, what if I fall again? What if I make it worse? And worse yet, what if this is who Jake really is? The morning of the concert, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. Jake was in the kitchen, humming as he poured coffee, acting like the last few weeks hadn't left a crater between us. I forced a smile and said good morning. He responded with a casual as if everything was normal, as if he hadn't guilt-tripped me into agreeing to a night I was physically and emotionally dreading. I stared down at my foot, still swollen, still bruised. My knee scooter leaned against the wall, a constant reminder that I wasn't okay. I wanted to speak up, to say something like, maybe we should stay home. Or can we sell the tickets? But I couldn't bring myself to ruin his day again. Or at least that's how he'd make it seem. So I stayed quiet. Again, Jake didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't offer to help with my brace or ask if I needed anything for the show. Instead, he went on about how excited he was, how this band had been the soundtrack to his college years, and how amazing the set list was supposed to be. All I could think about was the stares at the venue, the crowd, the ache already pulsing in my leg just from sitting up. By the time we got in the car that evening, I had already taken 2 Tylenol and brought an ice pack in my bag. I sat in silence during the drive. Jake didn't notice. Or maybe he just didn't care to. When we got to the venue, my worst fears came true. There were stairs. So many stairs. The security guards looked unsure of what to do with me. And Jake didn't help. He just stood there with an impatient look on his face, while I tried to explain my situation to the staff. Eventually, they directed us to an elevator, but it was slow and packed. We had to wait for 2 rounds before we could even fit in. By the time we got to our seats, I was sweating. My leg was throbbing, and Jake had already snapped at me twice for moving too slowly and for drawing attention. I was mortified. During the concert, I barely heard the music. I was too focused on the pain and on Jake's mood. He was all smiles when the band came out, clapping and singing along, completely unaware or indifferent to the fact that I was barely holding it together beside him. Halfway through the second set, I leaned over and whispered, I need to go. My foot is killing me. Jake didn't even look at me. You're joking, right? We just got here. We've been here for over an hour. I said just got here. Can you please just sit through it? I haven't had fun in weeks. His words sliced through me. I leaned back, blinking away tears, and stayed silent. Again, after the concert, the exit was worse than the entrance. Crowds pushed and shoved. Someone bumped into my scooter, nearly knocking me off balance. Jake barked at me to watch where I was going, and I just stopped in the middle of the hallway, frozen. People flowed around me. The noise, the pain, the humiliation, it all collapsed on top of me like a wave. I started crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears streaming down my cheeks. Jake finally turned around. Are you serious right now? That was it? The moment I felt something inside me break. Yes, I said. I'm serious. We got to the car in silence. I didn't speak the entire ride home. Neither did he. When we got to the apartment, I struggled up the stairs while he walked ahead of me. No offer to help. No hand reached out. Nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from the pain. Not even from the anxiety. But from the realization that the person I loved, the man I thought was my partner, was gone. Maybe he had been gone for a while, and I just hadn't seen it. Jake didn't care about me. Not really. He cared about being appreciated. He cared about feeling like a hero. But the moment I became inconvenient, the moment I needed something real, he cracked. And now I was the one holding the pieces of myself. The next morning, he acted like everything was fine. He made eggs, asked if I wanted coffee. I said no. We barely spoke that day, or the day after. But the distance between us, it was growing by the hour, and I couldn't stop wondering what would have happened if I had needed more than just a ride. What if I had been in the hospital for weeks? What if it had been worse? Would he have stuck around? Or would he have left the second it got too hard? The scariest part was, I thought I knew the answer. The silence between us had settled into something solid, thick and unmoving. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes with peace or understanding. It was the silence of a crack forming down the center of something you thought was whole. 3 days had passed since the concert. I moved from room to room on my scooter while Jake went about his life as if everything was fine. He still made coffee, still watched his shows, still left for work without asking if I needed anything. And me, I was shrinking, inside and out. I kept thinking about the words he said. Can you please just sit through it? I haven't had fun in weeks. He was right. He hadn't. But neither had I. I hadn't even had comfort. I hadn't had basic kindness. That afternoon, my sister called again. I hadn't told her about the concert. I didn't want her to worry. But the second she asked, "How's Jake doing?" my throat closed up. I didn't answer. She paused. "Rachel, is he still snapping at you?" "Sometimes," I said. My voice sounded so small. "Have you talked to him about it?" I let out a breath. "I've tried, but it's like he thinks this is all about him. He thinks I owe him for helping me." Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stuck with me. Love shouldn't come with a receipt. That night, I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, those words looping over and over. Love shouldn't come with a receipt. But with Jake, it felt like I was always paying, not in money, but in guilt, in silence, in trying to be smaller and quieter so he wouldn't explode again. The next morning, I finally tried to talk to him. He was buttering toast. The same robotic routine. "Jake," I said softly, "I think we need to talk." He didn't look up. "About what?" "I don't feel like myself anymore. And I don't feel like us is working right now." He set the knife down. "I've done everything for you, Rachel." I nodded. "I know, and I'm grateful. But it doesn't give you the right to treat me like I'm a burden." He finally looked at me, eyes sharp, like I'd slapped him. "So now I'm the bad guy because I'm tired. Because I snapped once or twice." "Jake, you didn't snap once or twice. You yelled at me. You blamed me. You made me feel like I had no right to speak or hurt or even exist without making your life harder." He stared at me, face unreadable. "I didn't ask for this injury." I continued. "And I've tried so hard to not make it worse for you. I called Ellie. I packed what I could. I went to that concert in pain because I didn't want to disappoint you." "You did disappoint me," he said. "You've been so needy." That word, needy, it hit like a slap. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there, staring at him. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The Rachel who had once justified every sigh, every rolled eye, every cold shoulder. She stepped aside. "I think I need to stay with Ellie for a while," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "I need space. And not the kind you take when you disappear for hours without a word. I need real space. Time to think. Time to breathe." "You're overreacting." "Maybe," I said. "But for once, I'm reacting at all. That's progress." I turned and went to the bedroom to start packing a small bag. I didn't know how I'd get down the stairs, or how I'd manage the airport. But I knew Ellie would come through. When I emerged, Jake was still at the table, staring at the wall like he couldn't believe what was happening. He didn't stop me. He didn't say sorry. He didn't say anything at all. And somehow, that silence hurt more than any of his words ever did. The ride to the airport was a blur. I booked the flight with the last of my savings. Ellie had a walker waiting for me at her place. She greeted me at the terminal with open arms and tears in her eyes. "I'm proud of you," she whispered as she hugged me. I broke down, right there, in front of strangers, with my head on her shoulder, because for the first time in weeks, I felt safe, at her place. I slept like I hadn't slept in months. No walking on eggshells. No pretending I was fine. Just warmth. Just quiet. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jake. "I didn't expect you to actually leave. But maybe that's for the best." That was all it said. No apology. No concern. No love. And with that one message, I knew I had made the right decision. Ellie's apartment was small, just a one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle. But to me, it felt like a sanctuary. Every corner was filled with soft light, cozy blankets, and warmth I hadn't felt in months. Her cat, Moose, took an instant liking to me, and curled up next to my knee scooter like we were old friends. It was the first time in weeks I'd been in a place where I didn't feel like I was taking up too much space. In the first few days, I barely spoke. Ellie didn't press. She just made soup, queued up shows I used to love, and reminded me every couple of hours to ice my foot. One night, as we sat on the couch watching reruns of The Office, she turned to me and said, "You know, this version of you, it's coming back, slowly." I didn't reply, but I felt the tears come anyway, because she was right. For so long, I had bent myself around Jake's moods, shrinking my needs, shelving my pain, hiding my exhaustion behind fake smiles. I thought that's what love looked like: sacrificing, enduring, staying, even when it hurt. But here, with Ellie, I remembered what it felt like to breathe without fear, to ask for help without guilt, to just exist. I started journaling again. It had been years since I wrote anything for myself. But each night, before bed, I jotted down a few lines. At first, they were just observations: what the sky looked like, how the coffee tasted, what Moose did that made me laugh. But slowly, the thoughts turned inward. Why did I stay so long in that discomfort? When did I start confusing obligation with love? What would I tell someone else if they told me the same story? That last one hit me hard, because if a friend came to me and said, "My boyfriend yells at me when I ask for help, then makes me feel guilty when I can't perform," I wouldn't hesitate. I'd say, "Leave." I'd say, "You deserve better." I'd say, "This isn't love. This is control wrapped in the illusion of sacrifice." So why hadn't I said those things to myself? I guess it's always easier to see clearly from the outside. One afternoon, Ellie and I sat on her balcony with iced tea in hand. The trees were blooming, and the air smelled like spring. "You think he'll reach out again?" she asked gently. I shrugged. "Maybe, but I don't think it matters anymore." She nodded. "Good." I think I kept waiting for some grand gesture, I admitted. Like, he'd show up and say all the right things, beg me to come back, promise to be better. Would you have gone back? I looked at her. I don't know. I want to say no, but honestly, a part of me, maybe the scared part, might have. "That's okay," she said. "What matters is, you didn't." That night, I stared at my phone for a long time. Jake's text was still there. Cold, short, final. I could have replied. I could have poured out everything he had made me feel. I could have tried to make him understand, but then I realized I didn't need him to understand. Closure didn't have to come from him. It could come from me. So instead, I opened my notes app and typed a message I would never send. "You made me feel like love had conditions, like kindness came with a price. But I see now, that wasn't love. That was control dressed up as care, and I'm done paying for something that should have been free." I locked my phone and slept like a baby. The days passed, and my foot slowly healed. I started physical therapy, got back to light walking. The scooter retired to the hallway corner. But more than that, my spirit healed. I started laughing more, taking walks with Ellie, reading in the sun. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving, I was living. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, not from Jake, but from myself, the Rachel I had been before all of this. It wasn't real, of course, just something I wrote during journaling, but it felt like she had come back to remind me, "You were never too much, never too needy, never a burden. You were just hurt, and you deserved care, not compliance. Comfort, not coldness. You are not hard to love. You just needed someone who knows how to love without keeping score." I cried reading that, not because it hurt, but because it finally didn't. By the start of May, I had ditched the boot, graduated from my scooter, and was walking, limping, but walking, on my own again. That first step without support felt like more than a physical milestone. It felt symbolic, like I was finally stepping out of the fog Jake had wrapped around me for so long. I celebrated the tiny victories: making breakfast without help, going down a flight of stairs without holding my breath, taking Moose out on the patio and standing in the sun for 5 whole minutes. Each small act made me feel mine again. Ellie surprised me with a weekend trip to the coast to mark my recovery. Just 2 sisters, salty air, and zero expectations. We rented a tiny Airbnb with a view of the ocean and spent our nights talking late into the night, like we used to when we were kids and shared a bedroom. That weekend, we didn't talk about Jake, not once. And it was liberating, because for the first time in weeks, I wasn't defining myself through the lens of that broken relationship. I wasn't Rachel who left Jake, or Rachel who got hurt. I was just Rachel, lover of grilled cheese, terrible karaoke, and sea glass hunting. I was coming home to myself. Back in Seattle, I started doing the things I hadn't done in months. I joined a local book club. I went to a yoga class, the beginner kind, because my balance was still trash. I even updated my resume and started exploring job options closer to Ellie, something I never would have considered before. Jake used to say Seattle was too gray for his taste. I used to nod in agreement. But now, every cloudy day felt cozy, gentle, like the world was wrapping me in soft wool and saying, "You're safe here." And then, one afternoon, I ran into someone from my past. His name was Leo. We'd gone to college together, shared a creative writing class and late-night coffee chats that always danced on the edge of something more. But life happened. I got serious with Jake. Leo moved cities, and the door quietly closed until it opened again. Right in the middle of a farmer's market near Pike Place, he was standing by the honey stand, holding a jar of lavender-infused sweetness and squinting at the label like it held the secrets of the universe. "Leo," I asked, blinking twice to make sure. He turned, and the second our eyes met, I saw the recognition flash across his face. "Rachel." We both laughed. Minutes turned into an hour. We caught up over fresh lemonade, talked about everything and nothing. I told him I was in the process of rediscovering life, and he grinned like he understood exactly what I meant. He didn't ask about Jake. I didn't bring him up. And it was perfect. Not because it was romantic. Not yet. But because I felt like myself again around someone else. Not someone's girlfriend. Not someone's patient, just me. When we said goodbye, he asked if I'd want to grab coffee sometime. I said yes. Not because I was ready for anything serious, but because I was ready for connection, on my terms. Later that night, I journaled again. This time, my words weren't heavy. They danced across the page like a heartbeat. I thought healing would be this grand, dramatic thing, like a movie moment where I burn his hoodie and scream at the stars. But really, it's been quiet, gentle, a series of tiny choices, choosing peace, choosing me. And I smiled to myself, because I knew the Rachel who wrote that wasn't the same girl who sat in the car after the concert, clutching an ice pack and wondering if she was the problem. This Rachel, she was braver, not louder, not colder, just clearer. I still think about Jake sometimes, not in a longing way, more like remembering a dream that used to scare you but now just seems distant and strange. I wonder if he ever realized what he lost. If he looks around the apartment and notices the silence is emptier now, not just because I'm gone, but because he never truly filled the space himself. He just wanted someone to orbit him, to validate him, but I'm not a satellite. I'm a whole damn planet, and I've got my own gravity now. Summer crept into Seattle with soft golden evenings and the sound of sprinklers ticking away in quiet neighborhoods. I had moved into a small studio not far from Ellie's, just big enough for me and Moose. The walls were still bare, the furniture mostly secondhand, but it was mine. Every morning, I'd wake up, brew coffee, and sit by the window watching the light change through the curtains. There was something healing in the stillness, something sacred in the routine. I wasn't looking for closure anymore. I wasn't chasing answers or hoping for Jake to realize what he had done. That part of my life had folded closed like the last page of a heavy book. Now, I was writing new chapters. One evening, Ellie and I sat on the floor of my new place, eating pizza from the box and laughing about nothing in particular. She looked around the room and said, "It feels like you again." I smiled. "It is me again." Later, after she left, I pulled out my old journal and flipped through the pages. So many entries filled with pain, confusion, guilt. But between them, I found the thread of something else. Strength. Little sentences that shimmered with the beginning of awareness. Lines like, "Maybe I don't need to apologize for existing." He made me feel like I owed him for loving me, but real love never demands repayment. Reading them now, they didn't make me cry. They made me proud. A few weeks later, Leo and I ran into each other again. This time at a little indie poetry reading in Capitol Hill. He smiled when he saw me. Like seeing me, there wasn't a surprise, but a quiet kind of hope confirmed. He asked how I'd been. I told him the truth. "I've been figuring out who I am without the noise," I said. He nodded. "I think that's the most important thing any of us can do." We sat together for the rest of the reading, exchanging whispers and soft smiles between poems. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and asked if we could do this again. I said yes. Not because I was looking to be saved, but because I had already saved myself. One afternoon, I got an email from Jake. It was short, apologetic. In a vague way, he said he hoped I was okay, that he missed what we used to have, that he was still trying to figure things out. I read it once, twice, and then I deleted it. Because the truth is, I no longer needed his words to make peace with my past. Jake was a chapter, a loud one, a painful one, but not my whole story, and I wasn't going to reread it hoping for a different ending. I spent the rest of the summer building a life that made sense to me. Bookshelves slowly filled with secondhand novels. My fridge had wine I actually liked instead of whatever Jake preferred. I lit candles that smelled like cedar and sea salt. I took long walks near the lake. I danced to old music in the kitchen when no one was watching. I laughed louder. I slept deeper. I trusted my gut more. And most of all, I never apologized for taking up space again. One night, just as the sun dipped below the skyline, I sat on the roof of my building with a blanket around my shoulders, looking out over the city lights. My phone buzzed, a message from Leo. Just 2 words. "You home?" I replied. "Always." And I meant it, because for the first time in years, I wasn't searching for somewhere to belong. I had come home to myself. Thanks for tuning in to Reddit Stories. New tales drop daily: drama, love, or ghostly glories. Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss the next story we tell. Got thoughts to share? Drop them below. We read them all, just so you know.